Welcome to the Group Dentistry Now Show, the voice of the DSO industry. Kim Larsen and Bill Newman talk to industry leaders about their challenges, successes, and the future of group dentistry. Visit groupdentistrynow.com for more DSO analysis, news, and events. Looking for a job or have a job to fill? Visit joindso.com. We hope you enjoy today's show.
I'd like to welcome everyone to the Group Dentistry Now Show. I'm Bill Newman, and today we're going to talk AI and practice management solutions and probably a lot of other things. So we have three experts here and really excited. This is, I think AI is one of those things that we hear now all the time, right? And I think most of us even see it in our daily lives, but kind of trying to figure out how it all is going to impact DSOs and group practices and dentistry. So the three guests we have Dr. Bruce Lieberthal. So Bruce, thanks for being here. And we have another Bruce. So we have Bruce Lipsig, and then we have Dan Larsen. So not three Bruces, just two. But first off, welcome all to the Group Dentistry Now Show. We appreciate y'all being here. And they're actually representing different parts of Henry Schein. So we'll explain a little bit about what that means. So we've got a Henry Schein, we've got a Henry Schein 1, and then we have an OEM company to Henry Schein 1. Right, Bruce?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
They're going to explain that a lot better. So anyway, let me do a little bit of brief bio. So the first Bruce, which is Bruce Lieberthal, Dr. Bruce Lieberthal, he is the Chief Innovation Officer for Henry Schein, Inc. So he's an East Coast guy. And so I'll tell you a little bit about Dr. Lieberthal. He is really at the nexus of evaluating hundreds of cutting-edge solutions and technologies, and he can really talk a little bit about what that all means. He advises the many medical and dental business units of Henry Schein. And right, they're not just dental, you have medical as well, and vet, right? There's vet there also.
Not anymore.
Oh, okay, sorry, scratch that. There used to be, I remember that. And so he's looking for, he works with global sales, marketing, and distribution, and really trying to connect them with important new products that can help customers run better practices and deliver excellent patient care. So Dr. Lieberthal, welcome.
Thank you.
And I should say a couple more things about Dr. Lieberthal, because right now he is leading Henry Schein, also leading Henry Schein 1's DDX business. So he can talk a little bit about what that is, and worked at Connect Dental for 2 years. And these are all different parts of Henry Schein or Henry Schein 1.
That's right.
And we're going to explain that. I'm going to let you guys explain that because it is a little bit of a mystery to me. So let's talk about the next Bruce that we have here. So we have Bruce Lipsig. And so Bruce came to Henry Schein. And so you've been there, 20 years now? It looks like you came in 2000. And that was with the acquisition of Integra Medical in May of 2000. So yeah, it's over 20 years, and worked with the Henry Schein team up until 2007, creating imaging products for Dentrix. So you handled Dentrix Image, Dentrix Image Ray, and Image Cam. And then we were on the equipment team from 2008 until this year.
Correct.
And now you are currently the Vice President of RealCloud Imaging, which is an exclusive OEM provider of imaging software for Henry Schein 1. And that's where Dan Larsen comes in. He's with Henry Schein 1 and has been in the dental industry for 15 years and is currently, so are you like the newbie here, 15 years?
Exactly,
only
yes.
So we have 20 years with Bruce Lipsig and Bruce, Dr. Lieberthal, how many years have you been in the dental industry?
Actually, maybe I'm the newbie then, because I'm here 13 and a half.
Okay, so it's at Henry Schein, but how long have you been at DMD?
So you have to make me admit that. 1983.
Okay, there we go. So yeah, well, so technically you've been in dentistry longer than any of us, but
yeah,
that's not a bad thing.
Right.
So tell you a little bit about Dan Larsen. So Dan has been in the dental industry again for 15 years. He is a principal product manager for Henry Schein 1, and really he's focused on Dentrix Ascend, which we're going to discuss in great detail. He's been a member of the Ascend team since its inception and enjoys working with customers and providing them a truly great experience. Dan lives in Utah with his wife, Shandy, and their 2 sons. And I know Bruce Lipsig is in California. And Dr. Lieberthal, are you in New York?
I'm in Patriots country.
Oh, you're Boston. Okay. And we're outside of Philadelphia, so we're in Eagles country, and it's been an interesting season already. COVID aside, it's been an interesting season.
Yeah.
Well, thanks, gentlemen, for being here. And you know what we decided to do is, since you're really representing different parts of Henry Schein, I think what I'd like to do is have Dr. Lieberthal talk a little bit about Henry Schein Inc., and then we can talk a little bit, have Dan talk about Henry Schein One, and then Bruce, you can follow up and talk a little bit about RealCloud imaging.
Okay, sure. So I'll start. So Henry Schein is obviously a very large company. We're a Fortune 250 company, and there are many hundreds of business units here at the company. As you mentioned, all of them having to do, or almost all of them having to do with medical and dental. We're globally in, I think, something like 33 countries. We have 19,000 employees around the world. And again, most of those employees are in the individual business units, but there are a number of people, I'm one of them, who are in corporate roles, and we serve or service the various business units around the company. My group, which is the innovation group, we're a little different than, let's say, an innovation at a J&J or a Google. Our role really is mostly to capture technology, edgy new technologies from young companies mostly that are quickly being developed in healthcare, or technologies that could be applied to healthcare, and figure out which are those that are the best fit for Henry Schein and our customers. And then the best way to understand what we do is we're sort of a virtual accelerator. We help those young companies and those products get to a place and a maturity where one or more of Henry Schein's business units can represent them in terms of marketing, sales, distribution of those products. We also have, and you mentioned the DDX, so I'll just quickly talk about that. We do have a very cool sort of skunkworks group of developers, believe it or not, in Nova Scotia, Canada, who develop some very, very cool software that we utilize for many, many different purposes inside and outside the company, including our clear aligners software, software that integrates very, very deeply with Henry Schein One software, which Dan will talk about in a moment, and helps communication between doctors and labs and equipment in the digital dentistry space, and a whole bunch of other things that group does. So that's Henry Schein, that's innovations, and Bruce and Dan, pass it to you.
All right, Dan, you're up.
Yeah, so maybe I'll talk for just a second about Henry Schein One. So some people may know that Henry Schein One is a joint venture between Henry Schein and Internet Brands. So Henry Schein One is really a lot of the software components, practice management. So products like Dentrix Easy Dental, Dentrix Enterprise, Dentrix Ascend, as well as products that came in from the joint venture on the Internet Brand side, things like Demand Force, Office Site, dental plans, I think I mentioned that, Sesame, and then also not part of the JV, but an Internet Brands owned company is WebMD, which I think most people are familiar with, which creates some cool opportunities for us. So again, Henry Schein One is a joint venture between Henry Schein and Internet Brands. Our headquarters is in American Fork, Utah. I think we've got something like 500 employees in American Fork, which is pre-COVID is where I would go to work every day. Now I'm at home like a lot of people. But yeah, I think we've got, it's a global business. We've got customers in New Zealand, Australia, and the UK, but headquarters in American Fork, Utah. So that's a little bit about Henry Schein One.
And Henry Schein One is a relatively young organization, right? I mean, and it was spawned by that Internet Brands and acquisition, and almost to kind of pull out the technology that Henry Schein had and kind of separate it and focus on it.
Yeah, exactly. The JV is relatively new. I should know this exactly, but I think we're somewhere 2 or 3 years. And in terms of the Henry Schein team that's in American Fork is pretty mature. I think, that because Dentrix was founded in Utah, that's kind of why we have so many team members that are here in the headquarters here. So that's kind of where it started from.
Yeah, excellent. Yeah, there seems to be a lot of dental talent in Utah, a lot of dental companies, aside from Henry Schein and that whole area there. Was it Silicon Slopes, they call it now?
Exactly, yeah. Yeah, pretty interesting.
Great part of the country. All right, Bruce, so tell us a little bit about, well, your background. Sounds like you spent time at Henry Schein Inc. and Henry Schein One, and now you're at RealCloud Imaging. So talk a little bit about that.
Oh, I appreciate that, Bill. I'm an inventor at heart. I was part of an acquisition. We made our own imaging software in the year 1995. We called it ViperSoft, and it did very well in the market. And in the year 2000, Henry Schein acquired our company and rebranded our product Dentrix Image. So we became the imaging component to Dentrix, which was a great place to be because you saw a lot of great technology and you were able to then translate that and communicate that technology and be able to integrate that into the practice management software. And now we have 35, 40,000 practice management software users or more. So it's a great place to be able to focus the abilities to connect those users to imaging devices and give them a better workflow experience, the better we can automate and integrate those products. So in the year 2000, with that acquisition, we were all brought together as one division. And over the years, we spun off a couple of different divisions. And now in the year 2000, we've come full circle. And now I have left Henry Schein to join RealCloud Imaging, which is an OEM imaging provider for Henry Schein One. And now we're bringing all of those imaging products much more closely together with Henry Schein One to create better solutions for the dentists. It's a pretty exciting time for me.
Yeah, excellent. So let's talk a little bit about, and maybe it's important, Dan, because I think this is really geared towards you and the two Bruces. Please, feel free to chime in. But so you have Dentrix, and then you have Dentrix Ascend and Dentrix Enterprise, right? Am I missing anything else there? And you talked about EasyDent, but maybe it'd be important, especially because our audience being, we have a lot of emerging groups. So I've got 2 or 3 locations, and then we've got the 800 locations, the big guys. And so talk a little bit about the different solutions you have and maybe where, the different inflection points are from number of locations. Yeah,
absolutely. So Dentrix obviously is the product that most customers are familiar with. It's kind of our flagship product where we have the most practices using. It's been around for a long time. The Dentrix Enterprise product really came out of Dentrix and was really targeted towards the enterprises, right? The larger practices. But around, I want to say like 2011 timeframe, we wanted to sort of reinvent ourselves and think about what's the system that's going to take us into the next 20 years. And that's where we kind of had this idea for Dentrix Ascend. And we really from the beginning wanted Ascend to be a multi-site product. That was the concept from the beginning, but we wanted to sort of throughout the playbook start from scratch. So I remember in the very early days, we didn't have any customers. It was an idea on a whiteboard. And so I would cold call dental practices and ask them if we could come out and just talk to them about what is the practice management system in 2020 look like to you? What does next generation mean? And we did hundreds of interviews, some Dentrix customers, but a lot of other practices on different systems because we wanted to, again, kind of reinvent ourselves. And, we saw some themes about wanting, a natural user interface is what we call it, which is basically translation for they want something really easy to use. They wanted to automate as much as possible. And so we took all of these themes and started building the product. And it was fun to, go from this idea on a whiteboard and no customers to, fast forward now. And we've got tens of thousands of users on the system. And anyway, so it's pretty fun. So Ascend is built for solo practices and also for multi-site practices. And the key things, we wanted to make it easy to use, access it from anywhere, have a lot of the tools built in so it feels like one solution rather than a bunch of bolt-on stuff you try to make work together in the dental practice. So that's a little bit about Ascend.
Excellent. Okay. Did any other feedback there? Bruce?
No, I think Ascend is a major paradigm shift when we went to a web-based solution, a cloud-based solution, which is really the best way to handle such technology. It's a way that most people are used to nowadays. So a cloud-based product is the best way to handle, especially in these COVID days where you'd like to be able to access your data from multiple different potential areas.
Sure.
Yeah, and maybe I'll add one thing to that, Bruce, that you reminded me of is when we first started building Ascend, we built it from the ground up. It has the same name as Dentrix, but it was a full rewrite from the ground up. And a lot of people questioned whether that was the right strategy. Why not just take the existing Dentrix product and host it and call it cloud? And we kind of took the more expensive, longer term, ground up, build it the right way for the browser, which was at that time was kind of an interesting, decision. I think there were a lot of questions about whether that was the right way to go or not.
Well, it's interesting you say that because, and I'm showing my age here, of course, but years and years ago, when the Dentrix, what we call Dentrix Core now, which is the product that most people have, the Windows product, when that was brand new, Windows was sort of brand new, right? So this was, mid 90s or maybe even earlier. And many of the products that were more implanted in the marketplace, in the dental software marketplace at the time, had been DOS products, including product that I wrote. And the path that most of them took was to port or sort of move over the exact functionality they had in DOS into Windows. And that turned out to be a very bad strategy for a lot of reasons, but mostly because if you run a DOS program inside of Windows, you can't take advantage of what Windows was great at, all the new capabilities of Windows. And I won't get too technical about that. Those companies and those products are really not players anymore at all. And so in a sense, when you built Ascend with that same mindset of, if we really want to take advantage of what the cloud is great at, we can't just port over a Windows product. It is the very much more difficult way of going. It took longer, it costs more, it's all of that. But the reality is it produced a way better product. And, so I think it pays dividends in the end.
Yeah, the challenges were incredible. I remember the challenges of trying to acquire images in a browser. When you need to talk to local drivers on local machines and be able to talk to devices, having these challenges seemed almost insurmountable and took new thinking and new technology. I think Ascend, as Dan would probably agree, was also a good trial and testing ground for us because it was brand new, so you could work on new ideas for workflows. And at RealCloud Imaging, we actually had a breakthrough that we patented in conjunction with Dentrix Ascend. What we did was we came up with an idea to automate the interaction between practice management and imaging rather than just integrate the two. We automate them so that they work together better than they would work separately. And one of the things we did was we created a way of acquiring images via CDT codes, right, Dan? So that we have the ability to then know why we're taking an X-ray, and as soon as the X-ray is taken, we can bidirectionally communicate to Dentrix Ascend and say, that procedure has been completed. You can go ahead in the practice management software now and close that procedure and update the ledger and update ReCare and automatically attach those images to claims. All of that bidirectional communication was all something we could start and look at freshly. And we actually have some patents and some IPs surrounding the ability to bidirectionally communicate between the practice management and the imaging. And it really created some great automation and time saving for the practice. Would you agree, Dan?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, we talked earlier a little bit about how we wanted everything to be included. And I think imaging solutions have kind of are in a lot of cases standalone and separate from practice management. But to your point, Bruce, with Ascend, one of the key things that I think we've really delivered on as a reason customers like the product is it's all one solution. It functions as a single experience.
Yeah, by having two separate programs, you can only be so close. By embedding things, you can really start to communicate better and automate the interaction between those two. And that really does eliminate clicks, make things happen faster, make things happen in a more intuitive way. And it was a great opportunity to reinvent all of this. I mean, I've seen a lot of major reinventions. I got involved in 1992, and we were doing intraoral cameras. And at the same time we were doing cameras, I watched practice management software grow up from a pen and paper to a computer program. And then we watched intraoral cameras replace mouth mirrors. Then from there, we saw film get replaced by sensors. And today we're watching impression material being replaced by intraoral scanners and two-dimensional imaging being replaced by three-dimensional imaging. And boy, we're about to talk about some great AI potential solutions that Dentrix Ascend is currently piloting. I'll let you talk about that. Maybe Bill, you'd like to cue that up.
Yeah, that was a good lead in for sure. That's the next thing on the list is really to talk about AI, and I know it's a buzzword that we all hear, whether it's inside of dentistry or just in everyday life now, and maybe a little bit of a fear factor kind of surrounding it when it comes to automating somebody's job and to oblivion. But let's focus on how it can help make practices, and whether it's multi-site or solos, more efficient, create better outcomes for the patients. So let's what does AI mean really to Henry Schein and Henry Schein 1, and then inside of Dentrix Ascend?
Yeah, so let me start us off. So first of all, you mentioned something really quick, and I won't dwell on it, but AI is not the least bit new. In fact, I was researching a presentation about a year ago on AI, and was surprised at the time to learn that the concept of AI was actually created in a conference at Dartmouth University in 1956. So the concept of computers thinking, having almost independent thought, or doing things independent of the operator, which is essentially maybe one of the ways you can describe it, has been something that's been around for quite some time. So with that, in fact, those who are old enough, again, will remember, I think it was in 1968, there was this breakthrough film, 2001: A Space Odyssey, where the HAL 9000, that red blinking eye, sort of took over the spaceship and ejected the astronauts, the guy named Dave, if you recall. But so the fear of AI and the promise of AI are not new. So what's different now, I think, is what people ask all the time. Why do we actually see AI happening? And it is all around us. Anybody who has an Alexa or a Google Home device in their house, or uses smart home stuff, knows that AI is definitely here to stay. The difference today is the technology is caught up with the dream. And that's why AI is having an impact today. And for healthcare, there's enormous potential. And we're going to talk about, I think, one of them especially today, which again is this pilot that actually we just lifted off. But the whole aspect of what in medicine is called clinical decision support, or the use of AI-enabled software to assist healthcare professionals make better decisions. So it's not making the decisions, it's helping them make decisions in terms of diagnostics and treatment plan design, and the actual, in certain cases, in terms of robotics, the execution of those treatment plans is really here right now. And we think it's an amazing opportunity for our company, and more importantly, for our customers, doctors, and dental professionals and their patients to open up the vista of that world right now and we see enormous potential. So I wonder, you know, Bruce or Dan or both of you, if you may want to just sort of describe what are we doing?
Well, Dan, I'd take a little guess at that first, to try to describe best how this pilot is rolling out and what we're trying to accomplish and what it could lead to for the future as we move forward. And then maybe Dan will outline the actual details of the Dentrix Ascend AI pilot that we just started. When we got together and we started looking at AI, we looked at different companies that were developing AI engines. And one of the first things that became clear, especially to Dr. Lieberthal, was that it doesn't seem like there will be any one particular company that will be able to do everything. There are so many different opportunities with AI that some companies were focusing in one direction and doing a great job. Other companies were focusing in another direction and still doing a great job. And all of these things could be connected to our incredible wealth of data through the plumbing that we're currently building through Henry Schein One. What we're doing is we're giving ourselves the ability to tap into the data that is held in Henry Schein One, the imaging data and the demographic data as far as the patient information. If you can put that together, it can be so much more powerful, knowing if it's a man or a woman when you look at that x-ray, knowing that they live near the river or near the lake, knowing the demographic information, knowing how old they are, how young they are. All of that can then correlate into the images and the viewing of those images to help us look forward and do something I like to look at called predictive dentistry, to be able to look forward and see things that are starting to progress and then help to identify them and then point them out and hopefully strategically work with them so that we can have the best outcomes. That is the multiple different directions that AI could go, and the amount of data that we have in our cloud-based solution. We're capturing 10 million images a month and putting all that data in a big old data vault that we can then mine and learn from. So with that, we've created the plumbing and we've created all of the architecture needed to start plugging in these different AI engines. And I'll probably turn that over to Dan to tell a little bit more about how Dentrix Ascend will make use of this pilot and be able to judge these different technologies. Dan?
Yeah, I think that's exactly right. And to me, what's exciting, you know, earlier we kind of again talked about wanting to have a single user experience, and so pulling in this technology into Dentrix Ascend so it just feels like one solution, I think is our long-term goal. And you know, Bruce mentioned learning, which I think is the part I'm most excited about with this whole thing. I wanted to share a story. So when I was in college, I had a public speaking class, and we were supposed to speak on a topic, whatever we wanted to talk about. And so I talked about this technology. This was maybe like 2009, and there was a technology called Google Wave. Do you guys remember?
I don't
remember Google Wave.
Oh my
So
goodness.
it was a product that, you know, Google used to do these long betas, like Gmail was in beta for like 10 years or something. So they would do these long betas, and they had this product called Wave. And again, I think it came out around 2009. And so I gave this presentation in college about how Google Wave is going to be the next thing. And in 5 years, everyone will be using it. And I was dead wrong, right? Because no one's heard of Google Wave. But what was interesting about that, the underlying technology, was the ability for two people in a web browser to collaborate on a document at the same time. So if you think about like Google Sheets and Docs and all of this capabilities to work on one thing at the same time, that survived, and that was incredibly valuable. And I think for me, you know, what's exciting is I don't know exactly what form the AI technology and imaging, exactly what it's going to look like, but I think we have a good idea about the areas where it's going to be valuable and the use cases. Exactly how it ends up working is, I think, what's in front of us. And so in the grand scheme of things, you know, Bruce mentioned that this concept of AI has been around since the 50s, right? So it took a long time to come to fruition, I think, in some cases. But now we're to I think what is the exciting part, where we get to learn how can this technology that's now real, how does that actually get applied in dentistry and in other verticals. So I'm excited about, you know, these next few years are going to be fun.
So what is AI like currently? What is being used in dentistry, and then how does it really, like, how is it affecting? First off, what's the learning curve? Like, if I'm a provider, I mean, is this something that is relatively easy to understand, or if I'm, an office manager working with Ascend or whoever's, tell me a little bit about that, and then it'd just be interesting because what's really applicable now, and then maybe we talk a little bit about how that affects like multi-site. So maybe that's like what's going on now with solos, and then is there a way that maybe there's different AI that can even be more impactful for somebody that has 10, 20, 100 locations?
Well, I think, first of all, AI shouldn't scare anybody. There aren't computers that are suddenly going to take over the world. And it's also, any software that's too difficult to use, AI or otherwise, is really poorly formed software, in my opinion, right? I mean, software should be a tool, and it should be an assistant. It shouldn't be a chore or work. And I wonder if we might want to, guys, talk about what we're doing specifically as a great example of how AI can have really practical importance in dental care. We've the three of us, and obviously many other people in the dental world, have been talking about AI for many years. What's exciting now, I think, with this project that we'll describe for you is this is a project that I think we won't have a hard time explaining to people what the benefit and the value is. It should be, I think, pretty obvious and straightforward what the value is. And this is where AI has great potential. So maybe I'll just kick it off, and then the guys will join in with me. What we've done is we've found really brilliant software companies, 4 or 5 of them actually, who have been able to create a branch of AI software often called computer vision. This is the concept of using software to look at, read, if you will, images. In this particular case, these images are largely radiographic images. And what it does when it reads those images is very, very quickly, it can look for and find pathology. This can be caries, it can be periodontal disease, it could be periapical lesions, it could be other types of pathology. We can certainly talk, guys, if we have time and we want, about how AI software gets smart in this particular example, because some of that is actually fairly mundane about how you teach the software, in a sense, what it knows and what it can do. And that and I think Bruce and Dan can describe that's largely experiential. But essentially, the software is able to look at a radiograph and very, very quickly find where the lesions are. And there's all kinds of practical use to that kind of software. And the fact that it can assist the dental professional in locating that and help the patient see better as the dental professional is trying to explain that pathology to the patient is really pretty wonderful. And what Bruce and Dan were talking about in terms of the cloud, it fits here exactly as well, because without the cloud, you can't do this. Why can't you do it? Because the smarts in the AI software that's reading that radiograph is actually not local to the user. It's a server with the software somewhere else. And so what's happening is data from these images, and by the way, this is very secure, all HIPAA compliant, data from those images is being almost instantly pushed up to the cloud, analyzed, and brought back down. And what the user will see is, little circles and indications of, here's some caries, here's a periapical lesion, and so on and so forth. But this is a truly wonderful advance in software, and only available in the very recent past. I mean, this is brand new stuff, and maybe have Bruce or Dan describe what have we done, since we're not the creators of this particular software. What have we done to provide real value to this kind of software?
Dan, you want to start there?
Yeah, I'll take that one. So I think it's similar to what we talked about with 2D imaging, right? Where we're bringing the technology closer to where the user is spending most of their time. So Bruce Lipsig mentioned, we have all these images that can be helpful in the learning and the teaching of the algorithm. But I think where we bring the value is we have a lot of practice management software users. And so bringing that technology to them to a place where it's convenient is where we can add, a ton of value for the practices. So, if you were to try to run these today standalone, there's a lot of steps between the dentist and getting those results. But I think what we can do with integrations and partnerships is bring that closer to them. Bruce mentioned that a tool that's difficult to use is not well created. And I think that ease of use is a key part, and where we can really add a lot of value. What do you think, Bruce?
Yeah, Dan, you actually put that really, really well, bringing the information to where the doctor really needs to see it. If you have an imaging product and you have a couple of marks on it, that's really great, but then you need to be able to bring that information into your treatment planning software and plan what you're going to do with it. And if it's available on a dashboard right there in your practice management, that's where those decisions can help to be made and then can be executed from there. I think that is probably the first step. People have looked at that like a bit of a second opinion, a bit of an assistant software helping them to focus on little areas. But I look at it one step further with the practice management, in that if we cannot analyze the image on the screen, but analyze the images in the doctor's database, we can see things a couple of years ago, a couple of months ago, a couple of days ago that maybe the doctor wasn't looking for at that time. Patient comes in complaining about sensitivity in one area, doctor takes some x-rays and looks at that area. Maybe there are other things going on in a new patient that he hasn't even had a chance to look for yet, or could have some sort of assistance as far as something screening the rest of the mouth, to be able to then treatment plan and create other potential treatments that could be done for that patient to help them have better oral care that maybe weren't seen on a first visit or on a first evaluation. I know we've actually discussed looking at x-rays and then populating a chart with the original dentition of how that case comes in the door at that point, so a starting point. But you can also use that same technology to look through all of the images that currently exist and find certain pathologies or certain things that are starting to progress, and then put together a small dashboard in the practice management, as Dan said, where that information is most important, and have a customer be alerted to the fact that, hey, your new patient has a slight watch that we put on number 6 because we see a potential loss there, potential caries developing. So now it's in the practice management software, not just in the imaging software. It comes up on the patient's chart on their next visit, and we can discuss and proactively look at these things. That's why it's so important to have that interaction with the practice management software, which is really what's running the practice. I think, Dan, you and I talked about this. Practice management without imaging really doesn't run your practice. And the things you can do when you tie them together really need to be brought back into the practice management, because that's where those things are seen and executed and planned. Right,
and I
Dan?
wonder if I could just build on that, on what you just said a little bit, which is, if we open our minds a little bit, one of the values of having this inside the practice management software is that's where all the images are resident. And so we can build workflows between the practice software and this AI imaging software. For instance, we can ask the imaging software to look through the entire library of images in a practice quickly and determine where are the untreatment planned, unscheduled work, and find that, and then maybe deliver that information to outgoing patient marketing tools that are also part of the practice software, so that we can help the practice take this amazing amount of data, which is great because this is treatment productivity that's sitting in your patient database, and get that information to outbound marketing tools that are in the practice software to reach out to the patients and try to get them scheduled and track that information in an automated fashion. This is real power for the practice that we just never were able to deliver previously.
Yeah, I think maybe one last thing I'll add to that is, with the multi-site practices in particular, as we've been talking about this technology, one of the things that I've heard over and over is, as a multi-site practice, wanting to kind of compare your doctors, because I think that, at the end of the day, this is all about the patient, right? And you don't want to have doctors who are underdiagnosing. You also don't want to have doctors over-diagnosing. And so as a multi-site or a DSO, having this tool that's unbiased, that's able to benchmark and understand, dentists' diagnosis of different conditions compared to each other based on data is really also, I think, an interesting use case that we've heard a lot about from DSO practices.
Yeah, that's a good point, Dan. It's like a neutral third party that's just giving an opinion from a computer's point of view.
Yeah.
Helps get a baseline. Very good point.
Yeah, I think, and again, there's just so many different use cases to this kind of technology. Another one would be the potential to adjudicate claims much, much faster in certain cases than we're able to do today. So as every dental professional knows, certain types of treatment, let's say endo, for instance, often is accompanied by, in these days, a digital radiograph, but very often there are people, sometimes dentists, who are looking at those one by one and determining if the claim can be adjudicated. This takes time. If, however, the AI software were engineered to look at those radiographs and adjudicate them pretty much instantaneously in real time, then it's really possible that we get to a place that we've been looking to get to for many, many years, decades actually, which is adjudicating claims pretty much in real time. And so this also closes the revenue loop for the doctor in a really substantial way.
It's just kind of going back to the point earlier. I think Dr. Lieberthal, you mentioned it, but I thought I would get through this podcast without mentioning COVID. But we lost at least a couple of months of production, right? And so I think kind of to your point about a lot of this undiagnosed treatment, right? That's there that you can actually look at, and the fact that it's there, the AI's in the practice management software, and then can connect and actually through outbound marketing communicate with the patients. I think that could be invaluable now, especially when everybody's trying to kind of get back to where they were or where they thought they'd be. They're going to need to be creative, and it's getting new patients isn't the answer. It's like what can you do with what you already have?
One interesting statistic that Dan, Bruce, and I have heard over and over and over again from people who study this stuff is that 30% of the caries that are in radiographs, somewhere 30% or north of that, guys, you can correct me, goes undiagnosed. And think if we go back again to this use case of looking through the whole library of images, that is a production in the bank, if you will, for the practice, and very, very important. It also important, obviously, from patient health perspective. So it's really all upside for this kind of technology. And again, it's not making decisions; it's helping the doctor make better decisions, and maybe more quickly and more easily.
Good. So I've got one last thing here to ask you all, and this is always kind of get your crystal ball out and give us an idea of where do you think AI is headed. I'm sure Dr. Lieberthal, you're talking to a lot of different people and working with a lot of different companies, maybe even outside of Henry Schein, and so you might have some insights. But I'm going to ask Bruce Lipsig first, and then we'll go to Dan, and then Dr. Lieberthal, you can finish up if that's okay.
Of course.
That sounds great. I'm a bit of a dreamer. I'm a bit of a visionary, and I like to see the potential for AI to create better patient care. I think better patient care can come back to better health, as well as lowering healthcare costs. Imagine if we can predictively see things that are changing in the mouth and address them earlier rather than later, so that they have less cost and better healthcare for the patient. So I'm kind of a dreamer. I see better patient care as the future. I see a lot of revenue recognition opportunities. And I think that they're important. And I'm sure that the revenue recognition will be great, but the actual health care of the patient, the actual better patient care is where I see things going. And that's where I'd like to help them get.
Excellent. Thanks, Bruce. Dan.
Yeah, I agree with Bruce. I think that, maybe going back to something that was mentioned earlier about, some team members maybe being concerned about their jobs and things being automated away. I've heard that in other industries as well. Is that a concern long term? And I don't see it that way. I see really that there are so many inefficiencies today that can be solved, that will allow the dental practice team members to focus on the relationship with the patient, and to put their time there. That's really, because at the end of the day, it's that relationship, it's the patient care that is the reason that they come back. And so I think the technology is just going to help facilitate that and improve that. So that's where I see it heading. I think there are other, applications of AI and machine learning, automation, things like chat bots on websites and helping patients get booked online, and patient communication tools. I mean, we see examples of those things already today. I see those continuing to improve, but like Bruce said, I think at the end of the day, it's better experience for the patient, more efficiency for the practice.
Excellent. Dr. Lieberthal, we'll let you have the final word.
Okay, so it's completely unfair that I had to go last because these two geniuses said everything. I was going to say the only thing I would add maybe is just one more use case that I would stick in there, and that's for implants. The ability for AI software like this to look at a set of records, including radiographs, but not limited to those, obviously, and be able to determine which patients in your database would be great candidates for it. And of those who would be great candidates, here are maybe 2 or 3 different case designs that you can look at. And, if you go to this particular case design, maybe the patient needs a sinus lift or something. And it might be best if you use this particular type of implant and this length of implant. The vistas out here in terms of what this kind of technology can do, again, as an aid to the practice, are enormous. I agree completely with my colleagues that this doesn't make the dentist less valuable through automation. It makes you infinitely more valuable. We're catching treatment that's needed to happen earlier and more often. We are opening up new types of procedures that never were able to be done before. We're improving people's health care and reducing costs. So and fraud and all the rest of these things. It's really all upside, and this is just great news that we're excited to bring.
Excellent. Well, thanks, gentlemen. I mean, I really appreciate the education. So we got an education not just on AI and Dentrix Ascend, but also Henry Schein 1, and RealCloud Imaging, and how you all work together. So I'd like to thank Dr. Bruce Lieberthal, Bruce Lipsig, and Dan Larsen for being on the Group Dentistry Now show. I'm Bill Newman. Until next time, thanks, everyone.
The Group Dentistry Now show has listeners across North and South America, Europe, Asia, and Australia. If you like our show, subscribe today, and please tell your colleagues about us.